anxiety, you have to make them call. There were a lot of calls made for a lot of songs in this movie. Honestly, like, this movie, I think that, like, when you see it, it feels like a big, beautiful summer movie, but, like, it didn't have any budget. So there were a lot of favors and a lot of begging, and, I mean, honestly, she was with me on the experience the whole time, all throughout it, so, like, she really lived this with me. Yeah, she was a person who stood up for you, and I'm so grateful to have that love and that support. But yeah, there were other people too that I had to call, and then people just said no. I don't know what that means. So if somebody has a dictionary, I would love to find the definition of that. It's so confusing to me. No, I just think that to be like the song to be put forward, but people, I was just like, I think they want to be part of it because we all just want to connect with people. We're all storytellers, and so yeah, really proud of the content.
Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Katie Joy here, and I hope you're all having an absolutely wonderful day. So, Blake Lively seems to be changing her story. But does that actually mean she's lying? You know, one time Brian Friedman famously said, "Documents don't lie, but people do." Honestly, I feel like that quote needs to be on a t-shirt or something because it's just so perfect. But since it's not my original quote, I'd basically be stealing it, and yeah, I'm definitely not about that life. I'm not trying to mess around with copyright issues, unlike the alleged behavior of the Reynolds Lively crew, supposedly. Anyway, Blake Lively's story about Justin Baldoni and this alleged film she claims was shown to her. You know, the one about a home birth. Well, it's taking a whole new turn. She originally described it like it was some sort of adult content, the kind you'd find on the sketchiest corners of the internet. But now she's totally changing the narrative. She's trying really hard to reposition herself as a victim here. And in a recent motion to dismiss that she filed in Texas, Blake Lively actually disclosed private medical details and even the home address of Jed Wallace. This, after she and her legal team fought so hard in New York to get a protective order specifically to keep things like addresses and sensitive medical info confidential. Yep, you heard that right. There's already a protective order in place for this exact kind of stuff in New York. But in Texas? Nope, nothing like that exists there right now. At least not yet. This was signed by and issued directly from the person who actually tried to serve Jed. But here's the thing. This address absolutely could have been redacted so easily. Still, they just went ahead and put it out there for everyone to see. Why? Well, because it's Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, and welcome to the wild world of celebrity hypocrisy. But really, what's even more interesting here is the way Blake is changing her story and completely reframing this situation as she scrambles to get out of this lawsuit in Texas. Now she desperately wants it moved over to New York, where things might work out more in her favor. And here's what's crazy. In this lawsuit and within this latest motion to dismiss, Blake actually admits she has absolutely no solid evidence against Jed Wallace. Not a shred. It's honestly kind of wild when you think about it. So today, I really want to break down a few of the biggest issues I'm seeing in this new filing. And trust me, I also found a couple of extra things over the weekend that seriously might just blow your mind when you hear them. Blake Lively seems absolutely determined to die on this hill. The hill where she's convinced herself that Mr. Jed Wallace is the mastermind behind this supposed smear campaign that's been floating around online since August. Blake has been working overtime trying to convince everyone that Justin is leading some massive attack against her, and that's supposedly the reason people don't like her. Not because of her own actions or behavior, of course. But let's be real here. This has nothing to do with any smear campaign. It has everything to do with the fact that she created those controversial ads that totally looked like the book It Ends With Us, except her version was called It Ends With Buzz, a promo for her alcohol brand, not to mention the cocktail she featured at the screening and after party, complete with names like Ryla Wait, which, by the way, is absolutely wild, considering that alcoholic drinks are connected to domestic violence calls in about 40% of cases in the U.S., according to studies. Yet, despite all that, She still wants to blame Jed Wallace for all her problems, rather than taking any accountability for the way she chose to market her film. And now, she's doubling down, claiming that Jed somehow caused all this drama himself by daring to push back against her narrative. Plus, she's even saying that her filing a complaint against him doesn't count as defamation. Now, I don't know exactly how this whole thing is going to play out in court. That's up to the judge. But honestly, what fascinates me the most here is just how far Blake Lively is willing to go to spin this story in her favor. Because if you start diving into these different court filings she's submitting, the stuff she comes up with is honestly next-level wild. She's really out here spinning different stories, and honestly, she didn't disappoint at all in this latest filing, both in her CRD complaint and in her updated, amended complaint. Now here's what she's saying about this so-called film that was allegedly shown to her by Jamie Heath. So, to really add insult to injury, according to her, Mr. Heath casually walked up to Blake Lively and her assistant while they were on set and just started playing a video right there. A video of a completely nude woman with her legs wide open. Naturally, Blake immediately thought she was being shown pornography and quickly stopped him. But then, Mr. Heath explained it wasn't porn at all. It was actually a video of his wife giving birth. That didn't make Blake feel any better, though. She was shocked and asked Mr. Heath if his wife even knew he was sharing such a deeply personal video with random people on set. And his response? He told her, she isn't weird about this stuff. Almost like Blake was the one being weird, for feeling uncomfortable. So Blake and her assistant excused themselves, absolutely stunned and unsettled by what just happened. According to Blake, Jamie Heath had just shown them an inappropriate nude video. But here's the thing. What he actually showed was a still image from the home birth video. His wife had a towel covering her chest. There was nothing graphic, visible. Nothing inappropriate, nothing shocking. The baby was on a towel on her chest and she was in water after giving birth. Yet somehow Blake is now framing that moment as if it was straight-up pornography. And this isn't the only time. She's shifting the narrative. Listen to this. In the CRD complaint, Blake also claims that Baldoni shared private details about his sex life, made degrading, inappropriate comments, described his own body parts, created scenes involving unwanted intimacy without her consent, and added new graphic content to the script. That included several extra scenes with nudity, a wild on-camera orgasm scene, and even unscripted nudity during a birthing scene. And for that scene, he cast his own friend to play Blake's OBGYN. Now, Blake is trying hard to twist this entire home birth moment and present it as part of a bigger sexual harassment pattern against her. Now, Blake is trying to twist that home birth footage and spin it into something totally different, saying that Justin was actually trying to sneak in unscripted nudity into a birthing scene where, conveniently, he cast his own friend as the OBGYN. But Blake phrases it like this, as her OBGYN, like it was intentionally personal and inappropriate. And get this, she says that this is only a small part of a much bigger list of misconduct she's accusing them of. But here's the thing, we already know that Justin didn't secretly add any graphic content. In reality, he simply passed, along notes from the intimacy coordinator, who was hired specifically for scenes like this. And let's be clear, Blake didn't like those suggestions, so guess what? They didn't do them. Every single thing only moved forward with her full consent. She said no, and that was the end of it. In fact, the whole idea of an on-camera orgasm was pitched by the intimacy coordinator, not Justin, and even that never made it into the final version. But now Blake's narrative has shifted again, saying that Justin tried to sneak in nudity during the birthing scene, and that his friend playing the OBGYN was some kind of creepy setup to be near her while she was supposedly exposed. That's what she's implying, that Justin was orchestrating this weird scenario. But none of this really adds up, especially when you go back and look at her original CRD complaint. In that, she very clearly said that she thought Jamie was showing her pornography and stopped him immediately. There was absolutely nothing in that complaint, not even a hint, about Justin trying to add nudity to the birth scene. It was all about the alleged video being inappropriate, not about filming her nude. And yet that's how outlets like the New York Times framed it, like she was forced to watch graphic videos of Jamie's naked wife. That's also exactly how Megan Twohey spun it in her podcast, really sensationalizing it. And then, in her CRD complaint, Blake quoted Jamie saying, "She isn't weird about this stuff." But let's be real, that comment wasn't meant to insult Blake or call her weird. It was simply Jamie saying his wife doesn't care about the video being shown. It wasn't about Blake at all. But Blake seems to have taken it super personally, twisting it into something it wasn't. And honestly, that's kind of the pattern here, changing her story depending on the audience. From one district court filing to another, the narrative keeps shifting. And that's one of the core arguments that Justin, his attorney Brian Friedman, and their entire legal team have pointed out repeatedly. That one of Blake's biggest issues throughout this entire situation is struggling to separate herself from her character in the movie. She blurred that line constantly, viewing every scene and every suggestion as if it was happening to her personally rather than to the character she was playing. Lively truly believed that every single conversation happening around her was somehow directed at her personally rather than being about her character, Lily. And this inability to separate Blake Lively from Lily Bloom caused a mountain of issues during production. It created unnecessary tension, confusion, and frustration because she seemed to interpret every creative discussion, every scene note, and every direction as a personal attack, not realizing it was all part of building the character of Lily. When you're hired as an actor, you step into a role. You bring a character to life that isn't you. That's the whole point of acting. But in this case, it really felt like Lively was playing herself instead of playing Lily Bloom. And to really drive this point home, she even claimed that Justin added unscripted nudity to a birthing scene and cast his friend to play what she calls her OBGYN. Like this was some real-life scenario about Blake Lively herself. But that wasn't the case at all. The actor in question was cast to play Lily Bloom's OBGYN, not Blake Lively's personal doctor. This was a scripted role in a fictional story, not real life. And despite her claims, there was absolutely no nudity in that hospital scene. In fact, as Baldoni and Friedman pointed out, she was fully covered, wearing a hospital gown, briefs, and everything appropriate for the scene. The only thing visible were her legs, which, by the way, anyone can verify by simply watching the film. It's crystal clear there's no nudity. And yet now her story has shifted once again, saying Justin's friend was going to be her OBGYN and implying that she was going to be more exposed. But was she ever actually naked? No. Did it ever happen? No, not at all. And after getting caught in these contradictions, Lively then pivots to another claim, accusing Melissa Nathan of orchestrating a smear campaign against her. But what exactly was this so-called smear campaign? According to Lively, it was about spreading the idea that she didn't have the best reputation in the industry, which, to be fair, wasn't exactly a secret. Her reputation had already taken hits long before this film. Remember the rhythm section? It was widely reported there were major issues on that set too. And let's not forget the numerous stories over the years about her being demanding, difficult to work with, or clashing with co-stars both on television shows and in films. She even alleged that Nathan planned to leak stories blaming her for people losing their jobs during production. But again, that wasn't some wild conspiracy. That actually happened. She was directly responsible for multiple firings, including 2 assistant directors, the composer, several editors, and other key crew members, many of whom were simply trying to do their jobs professionally. Yet somehow, all of this has now been repackaged by Lively as some grand scheme against her, rather than taking any accountability for her own behavior. All of this drama started because of Blake Lively basically taking over the entire film. Her behavior led to so many issues that they had no choice but to let several original crew members go. And because of that, they had to hire her personal team instead, which of course cost double the original budget. But here's the kicker. Blake didn't pay a single penny of that extra cost herself. Not $1 came from her budget or her pocket. She contributed absolutely nothing financially, despite these being her people. And to make matters even more interesting, Blake Lively herself is the one who leaked this whole story to the New York Times. Yes, she directly worked with them, hand in hand, to push this narrative out into the media. She claims that her legal team sent out a CRD form, along with a formal complaint and several cease and desist letters to Wallace Belden and all the Wayfair-related parties. And then, almost immediately after that, multiple news outlets picked up the story and started reporting on the CRD complaint. But leading the pack, unsurprisingly, was TMZ, who jumped on it first. And in their article, they included a statement from Brian Freriedman, who was representing the plaintiffs, and according to Lively, his words were completely defamatory. Later that exact same day, the New York Times published its own detailed article covering the allegations titled, "We Can Bury Anyone Inside a Hollywood Smear Machine." Now here's where things get messy. Blake acts like the New York Times article somehow wasn't the first report out there, using that as so-called proof that Belden leaked the CRD complaint. But then, in the same legal motion to dismiss, she turns around and argues that even if she did leak it to the New York Times, it really doesn't matter because she's protected under litigation privilege. So basically, her whole argument was that the CRD complaint was a legal document, and whether she leaked it or not, she's covered legally, as long as she believes what's in it is true. But here's an important detail. TMZ published their article super early at 6:54 a.m. Pacific time on the 21st, and if you recall, the New York Times piece dropped later that same morning. Plus, Blake had already given this story to multiple other outlets, not just one. And in the TMZ article, this is where Blake claims Brian Freriedman made a defamatory statement. In it, Freriedman didn't hold back at all. He attacked the lawsuit, saying it was nothing more than a desperate attempt to fix Lively's damaged reputation. He called the claims totally false, outrageous, and intentionally salacious, accusing Lively of trying to publicly harm others. He also added that she was an absolute nightmare on set, threatening not to show up for filming, refusing to promote the movie, and essentially causing the whole project to fall apart during its release. But here's the twist. Everything Freriedman said in that statement was already laid out clearly in his lawsuit, and now Blake Lively is turning around and calling that defamation, even though there's actual evidence backing up everything he said. Her threatening to not show up on set, threatening not to promote the film, and ultimately causing the film's downfall during its release because of her behavior. That's the exact defamatory statement TMZ reported. But out of all the outlets covering the story, it was really the New York Times article that gained the most traction. They were the ones who actually published the full complaint online, allowing anyone to read it in detail. And it wasn't just some random reporting. The New York Times worked closely with Blake Lively on this piece. And here's where things get even more wild. After accusing everyone in that CRD complaint of engaging in sexual harassment, she now wants the whole thing thrown out, claiming the plaintiffs didn't properly prove defamation. Pretty bold, right? Now here's how she tried to explain it. According to Lively, she listed all the defendants, including Wallace and Street, simply as part of the standard procedure, which, to be fair, is common in a lot of legal filings, especially in California courts. She also added what she called detailed factual allegations to support her claims, but insisted she never directly said that Wallace or Street harassed her or broke any contracts. But honestly, isn't running a full-blown retaliation campaign against someone in the media its own form of harassment? Wouldn't most people see being trashed in the press as harassment? Instead, she focused on describing the social media work that the plaintiffs were hired to do for Wayfair and Baldoni, including text messages that supposedly backed up her claims. But conveniently, she left out other lines from those messages that could actually prove her wrong. But that's a discussion for another time. She also argued that it's just ridiculous to think any reasonable reader would assume that everyone listed at the top of a legal document was automatically responsible for everything mentioned in all 80 pages that followed. And when you really go through the CRD form and the full complaint from start to finish, like the law requires, Lively claims it's clear she never directly or even indirectly accused the plaintiffs of committing any illegal acts under state or federal law. In fact, Street wasn't even specifically mentioned anywhere in the document. The body of the CRD complaint and the facts surrounding Miss Wallace were actually focused on a social media retaliation campaign, not sexual harassment like some might have assumed. So apparently, if you list someone's name right alongside 10 other parties and accuse them all of being involved in situations that included sexual harassment, that somehow doesn't mean you're directly blaming them for it. Interesting logic, right? But that's exactly the argument being made here, and it doesn't stop there. She's also trying to claim that none of this was filed with any sort of malice or bad intent. Listen closely to this part. According to Miss Lively, when she filed the CRD form and complaint, she genuinely believed, and still believes, that the plaintiffs launched a targeted social media campaign to retaliate against her for speaking out about the sexual harassment and toxic work environment she says she experienced while working with Baldoni, Wayfair, and Heath. And in her words, this doesn't prove malice, it supposedly proves the opposite, that her actions were rooted in a sincere belief that she was being harmed. Belief. Did you catch that? Let that word sink in for a second. Belief. Now, when you look at the claims she's made specifically against Jed Wallace in this lawsuit, you'll notice that almost everything is based on what's called information and belief. And what does that really mean? Well, in simple terms, it means that she doesn't actually have hard facts or solid evidence to back this stuff up. Instead, it means she believes these things to be true, either because of things she's heard from others, assumptions she's made, or impressions she's gathered, but without concrete proof. She's got no emails, no documents, no recordings, nothing that directly proves her claims. It's all belief. And here's where things get critical. In a courtroom, facts and evidence are everything. A fact is something that's objectively true, something you can see, measure, or document. Facts are the backbone of any legal case. Beliefs, on the other hand, are just personal opinions or feelings. Sure, a belief might explain why someone acted a certain way or reveal what they were thinking, but that doesn't turn it into a fact. Courts deal with proof, not speculation. Judges and juries want evidence, not assumptions or feelings. And what we're seeing here is Blake Lively basically exposing herself. She built this whole lawsuit around a supposed smear campaign, but not one that she can actually prove happened. Instead, it's all based on her belief that it happened. And belief without proof just isn't enough in the eyes of the law. And what makes this even more ironic is that she and her marketing team, the very people driving this narrative, have turned this belief into the foundation of their entire legal strategy. Her own husband created the backlash, which makes this whole situation even more wild. And when you really take a step back and see how easily she shifts her story from one complaint to the next, from one legal filing to another, it starts to make perfect sense why so many people just don't buy what she's saying. I mean, how can anyone trust her claim that this entire smear campaign against her actually happened, when every new version of her story seems to contradict the last? And I'll be honest, when I read through her court records, I wasn't just confused. I was genuinely concerned. Like at a certain point, you stop wondering about legal strategy and start wondering about her mental health. Because seriously, something seems very off here. There's clearly something going on with this woman. Whether it's a serious personality disorder, maybe some undiagnosed mental health condition, extreme paranoia, delusion, deflection. Honestly, I don't know exactly what it is. But one thing I do know, in court, belief alone isn't enough. You can't sue people for millions of dollars just because you believe something happened. You need actual facts, hard evidence, proof. And she just doesn't have that. Now, I want to wrap this up by pointing out something pretty telling. From her own complaint on page 4, she wrote, Lively starred in the 2024 hit film It Ends With Us, which Justin Baldoni directed, and his movie studio, Wayfair Studios, LLC, produced and owns. And here's where things get messy. Because how many times did we all see Lively on the red carpet, in interviews, on talk shows, basically acting like this was her film? She talked like she was the creative mastermind behind the whole thing, like she was responsible for the budget, the production, all of it. And yet, right there in her own words, it's confirmed. Wayfair Studios produced the movie and owns it outright. That's not just a minor detail. That completely blows up the narrative she's been pushing for months. And this isn't the first time either. Throughout these legal filings, she keeps dropping little comments about how she made them so much money, how she worked for free, how she volunteered her time out of the goodness of her heart. And now, suddenly it's crystal clear. Justin Baldoni owns the movie. He owns the sequel, too. And the fact that she keeps changing her story makes this whole thing look like nothing more than a lawsuit filed in bad faith. Like it's pure retaliation because things didn't go her way. It looks like she tanked her own reputation with her own actions. And now she's scrambling to blame anyone but herself before people catch on. And I have no idea why she chose to launch all of this in December. I mean, maybe it was because another Simple Favor was coming out, and she wanted to control the narrative or reshape her image before it hit theaters. But at the end of the day, just because you believe something happened doesn't make it true. And just because you're mad that you don't own the rights to a movie or its sequel, doesn't give you the right to rewrite history. Here, in her own complaint, she refers to herself as just a star, not a producer, not an owner, not the boss. Isn't that just a little ironic? She really made people believe she was the producer, didn't she? So, what do you think about all of this? Was she really caught faking it the whole time? What are your thoughts on her constantly changing her story, from the birth video situation to suddenly believing that the actor was going to be her OBGYN and not Lily's, to all these little shifts in her narrative every time the heat turns up? It's like every new detail feels messier than the last. Do you think this constant backtracking and rewriting of events is only going to make her case fall apart even faster? I honestly feel like this is the kind of thing that ends up doing way more damage to her than anything else. But hey, let me know what you think down in the comments. I love reading what you guys have to say about this stuff. And before you head out, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Seriously, I would absolutely love to see 10,000 of you hit like on this video. That would mean so much to me because I've never hit that milestone before. Y'all have been watching my videos forever, and it would be awesome if you could help me finally get there. Of course, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button too so you don't miss any of my future videos. Thank you all so much for watching and hanging out with me today. I appreciate you more than you know. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.